June 6, 1944. The English Channel, 4 in the morning. The sky is absolute black. 156,000 men are crossing the water toward the most heavily fortified coastline in the history of warfare. They are cold, they are seasick, many of them are 19 years old. And somewhere beyond the dark, hidden behind steel obstacles and concrete bunkers and 6 million mines, German machine guns are waiting. By the end of this single day, estimates suggest between 4,000 and 9,000 Allied soldiers will be dead, wounded, or missing. The true number has never been confirmed. The chaos swallowed the accounting whole. This is Operation Overlord, the largest seaborne invasion in human history. A gamble so enormous, so desperately necessary, that its failure would have reshaped the modern world beyond recognition. By 1940, Adolf Hitler's armies had done the unthinkable. In 6 weeks, they overran France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Paris fell. The swastika flew from the Eiffel Tower. Britain evacuated its army at Dunkirk, rescued by a fleet of fishing boats and pleasure craft, and came home with nothing but its survival. Hitler's empire now stretched from the Atlantic coast to the outskirts of Moscow. More than 300 million people lived under Nazi occupation or its shadow. The Holocaust was already underway, an industrial system of mass murder operating across Eastern Europe, killing with bureaucratic precision. By the time the first Allied soldiers set foot on Normandy sand, approximately 6 million Jews had been murdered. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union was absorbing losses beyond comprehension. Historians estimate approximately 27 million Soviet deaths in the war. Stalin had been demanding a second front since 1941. Every month without one meant another 100,000 Soviet dead. The Americans, under Roosevelt and the strategic vision of General George Marshall, believed the only path to victory ran directly through France and into the heart of Germany. Soviet total war deaths estimated 27 million. Nazi-occupied Europe, approximately 300 million people under occupation or occupation's shadow. Holocaust victims, estimated 6 million Jews, 5 to 6 million others. The decision was made in 1943. There would be a cross-channel invasion in the spring of 1944, and the man chosen to command it was Dwight David Eisenhower, a general who had never commanded troops in a major land battle, but who possessed something rarer than combat experience: the ability to make a coalition of proud, difficult men actually function.
Hitler knew the Allies were coming. He simply did not know where. The Atlantic Wall, 2,700 miles of fortifications along Europe's western coast, was his answer. In German propaganda, it was impenetrable. In reality, it was uneven and incomplete, with its strongest defenses concentrated near the Pas de Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel where any rational planner would cross. This assumption became the Allies' most powerful weapon. Operation Fortitude, the centerpiece of a vast deception campaign, created a fictitious army group under General George Patton, the only Allied commander the Germans genuinely feared. Phantom radio signals, inflatable tanks, turned German spies feeding false intelligence. The deception was so complete that even after D-Day had begun, German commanders held panzer reserves in place, waiting for what they believed was the real invasion at Calais. It was the most consequential lie in military history. On the German side, command was fractured. Field Marshal Gerd Rundstedt wanted to hold the panzers inland, ready to strike once the invasion committed. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, responsible for the coastal defenses, believed the battle would be won or lost on the beach itself in the first 24 hours. Hitler trusted neither man fully and retained personal control of the armored reserves. This single dysfunction would cost Germany the battle before it truly began. Atlantic wall length, approximate 2,700 miles. German mines, French coast, estimated 6 million. German divisions in France, June 1944, approximate 58. Panzer reserves under Hitler's personal control, 3 armored divisions. The invasion required a precise alignment of conditions: moonlight for the airborne drops, low tide at dawn to expose the German beach obstacles, and survivable weather. Those conditions aligned in early June. The target date was June 5, 1944. Then the storm came. Chief Meteorologist Group Captain James Stagg delivered a forecast that silenced the room. Conditions on June 5th would be impossible. Stagg postponed 24 hours. Stagg then reported a narrow, uncertain weather window opening on June 6th, 36 hours at most, followed by another system. The room went quiet. The generals waited. Everything, 4 years of preparation, the hopes of occupied Europe, the lives of 156,000 men, rested on one decision. Eisenhower looked out the window at the rain. He said, "Okay, we'll go." Those 4 words set the 20th century in motion. The darkness before the beaches. The invasion began not on the beaches, but in the sky. Shortly after midnight, approximately 23,000 Allied paratroopers dropped into the darkness over Normandy. The American 82nd and 101st Airborne were tasked with securing the western flank behind Utah Beach. The British 6th Airborne was to seize bridges over the Orne River and destroy the Merville Battery before it could fire on the British beaches. The drop was chaotic. Heavy clouds, anti-aircraft fire, and inexperienced transport pilots scattered paratroopers across dozens of miles. Men drowned in deliberately flooded fields, dragged under by 60 pounds of equipment. Some landed directly on German positions. Units were shredded before they could organize. And yet, from that chaos emerged something remarkable. Small groups of paratroopers, sometimes led by sergeants and privates who had no idea where they were, moved through the Norman hedgerows, attacking wherever they found the enemy. The very randomness of the drop created confusion across the entire German command structure. No one in a German headquarters could determine where the real threat was. Reports described attacks everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. On the eastern flank, Major John Howard's glider force landed within yards of Pegasus Bridge at 16 minutes past midnight and seized it intact within minutes. It was the first Allied ground action in Normandy. His men were 20 years old. Total Allied paratroopers, approximate 23,000. Drop zone dispersal. Some units landed 10 to 20 miles from their intended zones. Pegasus Bridge seized 0116 hours June 6th. Airborne objectives achieved by dawn, estimate 60%. At 0630 hours, the naval bombardment lifted. The ramps went down. Utah Beach, the westernmost American zone, went relatively well. The 4th Infantry Division drifted 2,000 yards south of its intended landing area, into a sector with lighter German defenses. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. assessed the situation and made the decision that saved thousands of lives. We'll start the war from right here. By day's end, approximately 21,000 troops were ashore at Utah, with roughly 197 casualties. 12 miles to the east, Omaha Beach was a catastrophe in progress. The terrain was merciless, a shallow crescent of sand, backed by bluffs 40 to 100 feet high, with German machine gun positions covering every yard of the beach from multiple angles. The pre-invasion bombardment had missed almost entirely. The bombs dropped too far inland to protect anyone. 27 of 32 DD swimming tanks assigned to the first wave sank immediately in the rough seas. The men inside them drowned. When the ramps went down, the German guns opened simultaneously. Men were hit before their feet touched sand. Men drowned in the surf, pulled under by their equipment. Units were shattered in seconds. The tidal zone became a geometry of intersecting fire that no amount of training could have fully prepared anyone to face. For 2 hours, the situation at Omaha Beach hovered on the edge of being lost. General Omar Bradley, watching from offshore, considered abandoning the beach. He could not know what was actually happening in the smoke and fire 2 miles away. What was happening was this: individual soldiers, officers mostly dead, plans destroyed, were beginning to move. Colonel George Taylor of the 1st Infantry Division gave the order that defined the moment. 2 kinds of people are staying on this beach: the dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here. By small groups, by sheer will, the men at Omaha climbed. Not because of tactical genius, not because of superior firepower, because there was nowhere else to go. Omaha casualties, June 6th, estimate 2,000 to 4,720. Ranges vary, full accounting never established. DD tanks lost, 27 of 32. Utah Beach casualties, approximately 197. British-Canadian D-Day casualties, estimate 4,300 to 4,600. On the British and Canadian beaches, Gold, Juno, and Sword, the fighting was fierce but more manageable. The Canadians at Juno pushed furthest inland of any Allied force that day, nearly 7 miles. The British 6th Airborne held its eastern flank. By midnight, approximately 156,000 Allied troops were ashore along a 50-mile front. The German armored counterattack, the one that might have driven the beachhead into the sea, never came. Hitler, still convinced Normandy was a feint, refused to release the Panzer reserves until it was too late. Rommel himself was not even in France. He had gone to Germany for his wife's birthday, convinced by the weather forecast that no invasion was imminent. He drove back through the afternoon. By the time he arrived, the beaches were Allied ground.
D-Day did not end the war. The Battle of Normandy would grind on until late August, through the Bocage hedgerows, through Caen, through the Falaise Pocket, where an estimated 50,000 German troops were captured, and the German army in the west was functionally destroyed. Paris was liberated on August 25th. By September, Allied forces were approaching the German border. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Adolf Hitler had died by his own hand in a Berlin bunker 9 days earlier. 50 to 60 million human beings had died in the conflict he started. But D-Day made all of it, the liberation, the peace, the post-war world, possible. A failed invasion would have delayed the liberation of Western Europe by a year or more, potentially allowing Soviet forces to advance further west before any Anglo-American army reached Germany. The Cold War map of Europe, the line between East and West that defined the second half of the 20th century, would have been drawn very differently. The post-war institutions that shaped the modern democratic world, the Marshall Plan, NATO, the foundations of the European Union, were built on the fact that Western Europe was actually free in 1945. D-Day made that freedom available. Everything built afterward rests on those 50 miles of Norman coast. Could it have been avoided? Probably not, given the nature of the Nazi regime. Hitler's ideology was not a grievance amenable to negotiation. The systematic murder of millions was not a side effect of German foreign policy, it was its purpose. The only real question was how to stop it. But the conditions that produced Nazism, The punitive peace of Versailles, the mismanaged depression, the failure of democratic institutions to hold. Those were choices. Choices made by people who believed they were managing the situation. History is often the accumulated consequence of those who believed they were managing the situation. Walk today through the American cemetery at Colleville-sur-Mer on the bluff above Omaha Beach. 9,388 graves, white crosses and stars of David stretching across 22 acres of Norman cliff. They face west, toward home. Most of them were young. Most of them never saw 25. They did not know they were making history. They thought they were doing their job. The peace that followed, imperfect, contested, sometimes betrayed, was purchased by what they did on a beach in France on a cold June morning 80 years ago. The world those men helped build still stands. Not perfectly, not without its contradictions, but it stands. That is not nothing. June 6th, 1944. 156,000 men crossed the water. They went. They did not stop.